Alrighty. I'm going to kick off testimony time whether you're ready or not. Excuse my phone, it's so I can tell the time because all of my watches are broken. If you don't know me, I'm Jo. I help out with the youth and young adults. I feel very loud. Am I? Oh, okay, it's just where I am. I'm hearing myself and I don't know, that's a bit uncomfortable for me. Anyway, welcome to testimony time. You guys might notice that the slide behind me is different to usual. And unfortunately, I'm realizing now that the words are not as big as I would have hoped. So I will change that for next week. But the reason we have a different slide is because you might remember at our church family day is what we're calling it. We had a real focus on talking about the up, our relationship with God, the in, which was our relationship with each other, and also the out, which is where we're taking God out into the community and doing things outside of this building or where we're building other believers up. And what we're wanting to do is help this particular time, testimony time, not just be a great place for the up where we honour God and the in where we share and build each other up, but a bit of a challenge room as well, where we can take these stories and we can have them out with other people. When we are in this space, it's really easy, I think, to use language that we're all familiar with. I don't know if you guys have ever been a teenager in a youth group when you weren't a Christian. I wasn't raised in a Christian family. And if you turn up and you go along and they're like, oh, wash me in the blood, Jesus. Do you know how creepy that is? That is a bad time. That's a weird Christian saying. And it makes sense to us because we have context and we have understanding of what that actually represents. But if we were to go and take that out to the community and be like, hey, Trav, person that I've just met, I just want to pray that you be filled with the Spirit and be washed in the blood of Christ, that's confronting and weird. And that's okay. It's all right to have language that's safe and appropriate for here. But what it means is if we're only practicing sharing about God with that kind of language and that kind of in mindset, it's going to be really difficult for us to then change how we speak and take that story out into a community and have them hear the way we want them to hear. Because we don't want to creep people out. We would love people to hear about God the way we see him. And instead of forcing something on that doesn't make sense, ask people to stand beside us and look in the same direction and see what we're seeing and encourage them to experience it as well. So testimony time. You guys all bring great testimony. The challenge is, can we make our testimonies something we would be comfortable sharing in a conversation at a coffee shop? And the reason I've got these points up behind me is I'm hoping that they might make it a little bit easier for us to do it. The 3 points, it's kind of a guide. You don't have to use it though. What we want to do is talk about the situation because we're storytelling. The Bible loves story, right? You look through the whole Bible and I don't know the statistics. I think it's something like 70% is story. That's how God communicates what's going on. He's really good at storytelling and he knows that we hear story well. Story is important. So we want to take people into the story. And I'm going to demonstrate today with my testimony that I was going to bring last week. So the situation is you're in my lounge room with me. I wouldn't actually do it like this if I was in a coffee shop. That's a bit weird as well. But my lounge room, there's not enough seats for all the people that are there. I've got bean bags. I have mattresses that I bring out and put out on the floor when there's teenagers there because they don't mind sitting on a mattress on the floor. And I've got a bunch of teenagers in the room and we're all playing a board game. It's called Hues and Clues. Has anyone heard of that one? Absolutely no one. Cool. Basically, it's a guessing game. You've got a whole lot of colours out and you've got to give clues to get people to guess the colour that's on your card. It's really fun. And it's not super competitive. The kids like it. So that's the situation. The need that we want to talk about. So if you're telling a story, often there's something that needs to happen. My need for that particular day was to have these kids have a conversation about God. They were in my house because it was a life group. So we get together, we want to build connection amongst each other. We want to make that important. That's why we're playing a board game. But we also want to have people connect with God. So me and my other leaders, we had prepared a lovely little thing. We're focusing on identity. and we're talking about who we are. This week we went right back to Genesis. We're talking about how man was made in God's image and how in the beginning there was a deception that they weren't like God. The snake tried to tell them that that wasn't the case, and Adam and Eve fell for it. And we don't have to. We can see that we're made in God's image and we don't have to go seeking to be made back into God's image. We're already there. That was the lesson. Now, the need was that we wanted them to get something out of it. And as a leader who's got a bunch of kids, you don't always know if that's the case. Okay? Point 3 is how God met that. Now, we started with corrections because a group of teenagers in the room throwing bits and pieces around. There's a dog, by the way. One of the kids is just nursing the dog like a baby, which he was totally fine with. It's chaos in this room. They're joking. They're having a great time. Connections happening. We weren't sure if the God thing was. And then out of the blue, one of the kids that's in the room says, "Hey, sometimes I have dreams, and those dreams feel different, and what happens in the dreams sometimes happens in real life after. Can that be God?" Which, not connected to what we're talking about, totally out of the blue. This is the child that's nursing the dog, by the way. Weren't expecting that to happen. And we had a moment where we got to ask these kids, well, do you want to come and talk about this? Would you like to have a conversation about the prophetic? Or would you like to go back to playing the board game? Because that was the carrot. If they listened to me talk about God, we would go back to playing the board game, because we're aware not everyone wants to stay focused in that space. And they had no interest in the board game. We spent the next 45 minutes doing prophetic activations and talking about God. And every one of those kids in the room got to say by the end that they had heard God speak. That is how God met that particular need. Totally awesome, okay? So that is the challenge that we wanted to put out to you guys. Can we frame a testimony, something that God's done, in that simple way, so that when we go and share it outside of this room, it makes sense and people can ask questions? Because I could very easily tell people in a cafe, hey, this is a thing that happened with my teenagers. And they might go, cool, all right, that's a bit weird. Thanks for sharing, Joe. But my hope would be that they would go, why would they want to do that? What does prophetic mean? It would have a conversation and they too might be able to encounter God in that moment. So that is our invitation and challenge. I'm hoping now that that's enough time that some of you guys might like to have a go at doing your testimony that you would have already brought, but with a bit more of a focused delivery. Is there anyone willing to give that a go today? There's beautiful smiles. Is that a bit daunting to do up the front, maybe? Yeah. So Vera's nodding. She's thinking this might be a bit daunting. So we're going to do an activity time. Sorry, guys. You're not going to come up the front. What I would love for you to do is grab a partner. Now, this can be someone that you came with. It could be someone that you don't know that well. But if you could pair up, we're going to do a little bit of testimony time practice together. Go for it. You got to move. And moving might just be turning to the side. There's a couple of groups of 3. If there's an odd number, that's okay. Okay. And if you can't think of a recent testimony, can I encourage you to think of how you met Jesus? So if you haven't done a recent testimony, if there's nothing in your head straight away, think about the first time you met Jesus, and can you share that quickly and succinctly using those points? You've got plenty of time. I just want to say I love that no one was happy to come up and every single one of you is having a great conversation. It's so good. Okay. If you haven't finished, now is the time when the waiter is coming to your table. He's passing the bill. They've got people waiting. So we're going to finish our story really quick. If you've just come in the room, we are doing testimony time. We're practicing how we would do this if we weren't in a space where everyone knows God and everyone understands what we're talking about. So we're considering the situation that our testimony is. what the need was that needed to be met and how God did that. And we're doing that really succinctly as a bit of a practice. And a couple of people are still going, and that's fine. What I'm going to do, this is good. It means that it's working, right? We've got engaging conversation. God is being honoured in that. I want to check though, is there anyone that would be willing to bring the conversation they had just now and deliver it up here so people might be able to see how you went with that? Simon's got a hand up. You can't volunteer someone. Yeah, do you want to be dobbed in? Yeah, I'm confused. Are you coming up or not? Yeah, okay. Thank you. So we're going to finish on this one testimony. Thank you. It's all good.
Okay, the situation was I couldn't sleep last night. The need was I needed to read something, or I needed, just something. So how did God meet that need? He led me to read it's Dutch Sheets. He's an intercessor and he has an app called Give Me 15. And I'd been, my testimony basically, I grew up in Dutch Reformed Church actually, and I was blessed enough to be part of the charismatic renewal in the early 80s. And I've longed for that time again. Basically, the revival is just an enhanced sense of the Lord's presence. The Lord's presence is so real, and it's been 40 years since then. And although we've had pockets of the Lord's presence, I just felt we've missed that whole sense of revival, global kind of revival. So I was just reading that, and he was saying they believe, that it is coming again, but it will be different this time, that there won't be a church or a country where it will happen, but it will be among pockets of people or bunches of people, I think was the word he used. And the people that he will use will be those that are soaked in the oil of the Spirit. So those that are just soaking in, allowing God's Spirit just to fill them, and then when he releases that fire, it will, it will just burst into flames around the world, wherever those bunches of people are. And I thought of us here in our little church here, and it just resonated with me. That's what we do. We like to just soak in his Spirit and allow that Holy Spirit to, just fill us. So be encouraged. I guess we just allow his Spirit to fill us, and then when the time is right and he lights those fires around the world, let's be a part of that.
Awesome. Thank you. That's amazing. Okay. We are very close to starting our worship service. Thank you for that amazing note to end on. Guys, we're going to wrap it up so you can have a bit more conversation, the worship team can prep. But this will be a challenge that we're going to follow up on for the next few weeks in testimony time. So I'm going to pop these points up on Facebook. If you'd like to have a look at them and think of the testimony you're bringing, what they're going to do is just keep inviting you into the challenge of making this something that we can take out into the community, and not just that something that feeds us in here, because it can be both. Alrighty guys, you are free to socialise for like 7 minutes. Go for it.